So I have my basic sketch figured out, and now I'm going to go in. I realize it's quite sloppy looking, but I don't really care because I'm making notes for myself, so if I'm speaking to myself, that's fine. But I want to go in and I want to start refining things because I know that some of this is a very loose sketch and it's not quite in the right place, and I want to start getting some stuff figured out. So I'm looking at the head here. I made the head larger, and then I really got the slope of the shoulder, and I'm trying to relate parts like the lollipop goes to about the ear. The ear is angled downward. I see the line of his hair in the back here, actually right about mid-ear, so that's a little bit higher here for the hair. And when I speak about this, I'm not really thinking of the hair as drawing the hair or refining the shape. I'm looking at it as a way to measure the angle of how his head is tilted. And I see that this ear is higher up, and so I want to get this lower ear here and the higher ear to remind myself also that when I make the skull large, the top of the skull is going to be parallel, tilting like this, okay? Even though there's foliage in front of the skull, I can't figure out what it is. Right now I don't really care about the foliage because I can put it wherever I want later if I decide I don't even want it where it is. Although I like him sort of half hidden in there. Kind of gives you a little secret sort of spy moment, I guess. But anyway, I want to make this parallel to that. I want to make this the skull because the skull is a wonderful thing to draw, and in a way it's easy, although I suppose that's kind of a ridiculous thing to say. But what I mean by that is that it's not fleshy. You don't really have fat on your face. I mean, you can up in the cheeks and the face part, but as far as it goes, the bone structure and the neck and things are going to be things that we can figure out, you know, where they are. So I'm trying to look at the negative spaces between the hand and the arm, for example. There's a V shape there, but it's not just a V shape because the lollipop comes here. So now I say, okay, there's a certain elongated V shape. I can see I don't quite have it right here. So I want to move in this hand because the hand comes to the left more of the lollipop. So I may have the lollipop distance, but the distance from the ear is quite close. So then I look at the shoulder and I think, well, what's going on with the shoulder? Do I not have, what am I doing wrong here? So anyway, and this is why I had mentioned in an earlier video about painting Castelvecchio that it's difficult with my training to design something more loose or abstract because my training is to draw what I see. And in this case, I don't have the luxury of a live moving model to draw from. So, yeah, that makes it, see, this shoulder needs to be closer to the ear. So then, now I realize, okay, do I need to pull the shoulder this way or do I need to pull the head out this way? What do I do? Because when I get confused about stuff, I try to make it a yes or no question. And then I can decide, okay, great, which way does it go? So when I decide that I want to change, either pull this back or pull the head forward, what do I want to do? Well, first of all, I want to look at the gesture. What I like about this picture is the kid is sitting here, leg extended this way, body extended, and he's got a twist to his torso as he's looking down at something interesting for him. He's leaning, but it's not a dramatic lean. There's a nice sweep of the back that goes here, which I do like. So now I can maybe start dropping some vertical points because even though he's got his hand out and he's resting on his hand, there's still going to be an equilibrium to the body because he's not going to have all of his weight resting on his hand. His hand is something that helps him as he twists to stabilize himself because he's sitting on rocks and in water. So it would be an easy way for him to slip into it, which he may or may not want to do. All this is summertime, but I assume he's enjoying this little lollipop. Anyhow, so the hips are usually something I like to get in kind of early on. I started with the shoulder here, but I think most of that was because I wanted to make sure that I don't get the figure too close to the middle. So I want to pull this out here and see what's kind of going on here with the arm coming out. The arm I know is my resting point. Now see, I don't see his shoulder behind the foliage, but I kind of have an idea that the arm goes about down here, as I was talking about before. So anyway, to get back to my original thing, I want to see how does the center of his skull here relate to where it drops down to the hips. So his hips are actually off to the left here of this vertical line. And I can see that I don't have enough hips here to actually make enough anatomy to support a body this size. So I'm fine with moving out the hips here. So the thing is that if I decide that this is my fixed shape here, because that's another thing. You want to work large to small. I have this figured out for the size of this particular canvas, so I'm working large to small this way. I kind of have my outlines. I know where my foot goes, I know where my foot goes, I know where the hand goes. Relate the hand, it's a little bit sloping up from the foot. I've got this kind of diagonal going on here with the energy, which I really, really like. That's kind of the same. And then I have this triangle. So you see the lovely, it's almost an equilateral triangle here, but you know, short on this side, because obviously this point would have to be in center of this triangle, be equilateral. But I've got kind of a nice thing going on here with some evenness and enough variety to make it interesting for me. Because it has to interest me before I can have a hope to interest you, right? So, alright, and now I see that there's wind catching his hair, and it could be that I've got too much skull here. So, let's just maybe take this down. But I don't know. It may be that the skull, I'm going to have to think about how that's actually going, because I see that this diagonal relationship that I've got going from corner to corner, there's the touch of his head is some distance away. I can pull this a little bit down here and leave this. So let me just erase some of that, because it's real easy once you get scruffing things in to kind of forget where you are. Now I see a little bit of his face here because he's looking down and he's looking away from me. And it's interesting because I don't know if people would think that was a nice composition. They always say you should be looking into the image instead of out of it. But I'm not really concerned about what he's looking at so much, because he's looking down, and whatever it is probably right here that interests him. Maybe it's a fish in the water, or maybe it's just a moment where he's trying to catch himself from sliding off of the rock. I'm not interested as much in what he's doing, so that for me is not the subject so much of this drawing, and I'm going to leave it like it is right now. But I see there's a nice curve going from the top of his skull. I can make a flow line going through to a really nice subtle C curve going down the curve of his back here. And but I'm going to cut in a little bit more here, because that's what we do. We have the little butt cheeks sort of bunch up here as they're squished against a hard surface. And then we're going to go up the spine, and then the spine is going to do a really nice gradual curve again here. And then it'll split, because I can actually see the spine a little bit with the rib cage happening right here, and then that's going to be the rest of the oval of the rib cage. So the spine will go here and it'll go up into the neck. So I can see that the spine goes up in the drawing, and then the neck goes really, really forward because he has his head forward. But I'm looking at the difference that drops off. The center of his neck here is right above this crease. So I'm actually doing okay on the drawing, okay? Give a little bit of slant here and a little bit of a push there. And then I can see that this thigh is drooping down too low. So I can see this is kind of going on here. I actually cannot believe that. Now, the lowest point of his bum goes inside the elbow here. And yeah, so I'm going to pull his elbow in this way, and this maybe proportionally looks, it's a relatively, I don't know, maybe I could go a little bit more this way. I don't want to make this drama, because again, I don't want to accidentally move his whole body towards the center of the image, because I don't, it's already kind of there. So let me make this as my, excuse me, bottom hip here. curving. I can see it curves up before it gets to my vertical line I've dropped. So I'm going to start pulling this up a little bit more, get rid of this kind of thing going on because I'll get lost. I'm actually sort of surprised that I decided to take this on because I don't do well when I'm talking while I'm trying to think. And, but you know, we'll see. The nice thing is, there's only so much I can do. All of a sudden I'm thinking I don't have enough space here. I need to pull these hips down. There's not enough space going on here with this. And so I'm looking at that. And my center, see, this is what's throwing me off. I have this white here. So the center is here, about halfway, is about here. So I have the foot. Let's see, there's... and I don't see the end of my board there, but okay, so this is my spot here. So the foot is going to come down, oh, it's kind of horizontal, but it's a little bit higher up at the heel, which makes some sense, of course. So I'm going to leave that about there. I like the spacing between this line here and the foot. Foot doesn't ever touch this horizontal line, but I can also see that from here, from this space to this space, the bum needs to be more down this way. And that's good because I really need, you compare a skull to the hip needs to have a lot more space to be able to support the entire weight of a body. So if I leave this as my lower point now, and see, because what gave me the clue to that, frankly, was that when I started to get this angle here from the hip going up into the leg, I realized, wait a minute, that's not good. And I have my horizontal line here, and I know that both the legs, this back leg here, is underneath that a wee bit. So all of a sudden I'm going, well, what happened to my leg here? That's not right. That is way too thin of a leg. So that's how you make clues that if something doesn't fit, what else is wrong? It wasn't that I was going to somehow make this leg and I say, oh, well, it has to be at this angle. Okay, well, then that pushes the leg up. Okay, if you push the leg up, what's the space between the arm and the leg? Not going to go. It's not going to work too much. So that means that this elbow is either too low or the hips are too high. So I've got to find out where the space is here. And in this case, I've got my corner point. I can see that the elbow goes up above that, but the elbow dips down a wee bit from this horizontal line here. So I'll pull that in here and reinforce that this is what I'm happy with. So if I'm happy with this, something's got to give here, do you see? So anyway, so that's the elbow, and then the leg is coming over this way, and it's going to do a great coming down, and then it'll bend at a knee that is not visible. So I can see that there's a wee bit of a triangle shape here that's light. That is something that what I see. And I'm trying to measure now from this. I measured, there's a fourth. So I have a fourth, a fourth, a fourth. Wait, here's the line for the fourth. And then a fourth. And so I'm looking at this and going, okay, so this knee pops up about maybe here, maybe. Now remember, a knee is a bony joint. It has a lot of muscles that are rock and rolling into it at different places, but it's pretty much going to show more bone, which is wonderful because you want that after having nice fleshy muscles. You want that contrast, but I mean that's the design of the body when you choose those things, but he'll need to be a little bit around also because he's a younger child, and a young child is not going to be as hard, I guess, as an adult. Angular is the word I was looking for, not hard. That sounds kind of vulgar, doesn't it? And I don't mean it to do that at all. What I have to do is because, one, I'm used to painting adults, but two, because I'm a drama person, and I like the anatomy so much, I have to be careful not to put in too much rock and roll. I know that the femur curves this way, and that's something that's going to affect the drawing. But I've got to get rid of this. You see, my brain already is freaking out because I don't want to do anything with the leg because I think it's just too thin. It's not working. So where did I put the stomach? The stomach is inside this line of the arm here. I don't really want this to be a flow-through line to continue. I want the stomach to be in from the arm a little bit. So, but also it's not really a vertical line. It's gonna be angled a little bit, but he's got a little bit of a pooch there because babies do, but also because he's got leg pressing against the torso. So, okay, so I don't want to get too low because that makes his body way, way too low. So I think right about here is going to work fine. And then I want to get a diagonal. The reason I say diagonal is because my brain sees triangles. And even though a lot of people do the grid, and the grid is quite helpful, I actually find that for me, the triangles make things work. So if I go from the elbow point to the small of the back here, I can see that that angle is more like this, okay? So that tells me I need to raise this up high, give his hip a little bit more room here before I start curving into the small of the back. So again, I want to get rid of these other sketchy lines here, and hope that as I keep making more and more relationships, that my body, well, the body of the figure that I'm drawing starts to look like it actually works together. And really, I do want to say that if I were actually having a good knee, I would not be, I want to make this shoulder length go down, I would not be sitting here drawing, I would be standing. Even though I'm working from a photograph, which again is not my favorite way to work, but it's what I've got right now. So, more important to do something than not. And I want to make this triangle to figure out the length of this hand. So I can see here that if I continue this line, they're not quite even. The hand is a wee bit inside of this line at this angle going up here. But I can start to block out. And I'm also looking at this negative shape. You